Hello and welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. This is your host, Wes Hilliard. Our sponsors this week are ZocDoc, Backblaze, and Fast Growing Trees. I'm joined once again by William Gallagher. How's it going over there?
Do you know, actually, I'm a bit frightened suddenly. I'm thinking the Department of Justice might come after me next with about as little grounds as they have over Apple. How are you over there?
Well, living in the United States, I think I have a little bit more to be worried about as far as just having random lawsuits levied against me, but that's just how it goes. Don't spill coffee on anyone. You might be in a bad way. But yes, I think we'll be getting to this first. But before we get there, I do want to bring up something that'll be happening at the end of the show. William and I have been discussing some ideas for the podcast and getting more stuff for the premium users, and we've come up with something called AppleInsider Plus. So we're going to be adding a segment just for paid members. The normal show is going to continue as always. We'll start and finish the same. Paid subscribers won't have to listen to ads. Nothing's changing there. But if you do pay, there will be an extra segment at the end. We're going to try to cap it at 15 minutes. It could be 3 minutes. It really just depends on what we talk about that week. And topics are going to be more focused on us, your hosts. This week we're going to be talking about our desk setups, our offices, and stuff like that. So if you're interested in hearing AppleInsider Plus, be sure to subscribe in Apple Podcasts or via our Patreon. Everything can be found in the show notes for subscribing. Hope you enjoy, and let us know what you think. Now, on to the show. William, yes. Regulation everywhere. I mean, I'm surprised that every country in the world isn't just antitrusting Apple right now. What's going on?
The worldwide picture, I do think. I mean, it's so easy to be cynical about this, and I think there is purpose and there's reason to it. But I am aware that Apple is a bank that countries everywhere, including the US, can get money out of when they try hard enough. That sounds so cynical, even for me. The thing with the DOJ is I think they actually had a point. It's just they don't have a point anymore. It's like me when I've built up a story to tell somebody and I'm beaten by a headline and something has changed and I still kind of try to tell the joke anyway. There's nothing there. I looked at the DOJ's argument and some of it used to be right. Some of it's peculiar. I could go on like this. You can tell I've just been writing about it, can't you? I am British, though. I am in England, so I am very separate from it. You're much more aware of US laws and regulations and how this goes necessarily. So am I wrong as an outsider? Is it all sensible and the DOJ is right?
Well, the issue is they took too long. I was preparing a story on this today because we were pretty much ready to go for the DOJ to do this morning. And it's funny, every complaint that was raised about Apple and antitrust since 2019, pretty much since Spotify complained about Apple and its control over Apple Watch apps and third-party music services, the 30% commission, and how its smart assistant can't directly address Spotify, all of those things. And it turns out every one of those complaints in 2019 have been resolved in some way, even as recently as Apple's removal of, what is it called, anti-steering earlier this year. So again, everything has been addressed in some way from that complaint. And then there have been a pile of other smaller complaints, but mostly identical in some way, dealing with the commission. People think it's unfair that Apple has control over who gets to do what in the App Store, that kind of stuff. So here we are. We have a lawsuit. Now, there's only a few bullet points, but it's a giant lawsuit. Let's see what the DOJ has a problem with for Apple. Do you want to read those?
Well, you said it's a massive filing, but you're right. They do actually have a kind of small bullet point section to it. The one I find most interesting, I think, is I think this is the first one. I think this is the first one they go on, saying that Apple has restricted super apps. Super apps, according to the DOJ, being an app that does many different things. Best example of this, the first example you got to think of is WeChat in China. This incredible, dominant, massively popular app that's one app, but through it, it is all of the social medias you can think of. It is messaging one-to-one. There are shops on there. There's online payments. There's transferring money. It does everything. If you go to WeChat in China, you might well not have to go to any other app most of the time. The only trouble is, I think the reason that is the best known instantly to mind example is it's on the iPhone. So this one, I can't fathom. Apple is stopping super apps except when it doesn't stop super apps. Am I missing a point there?
Well, that one feels very oddly driven by X and Elon Musk. He has a lot of well, again, the DOJ. Just to be clear, American listeners should probably know this. The DOJ generally acts outside of party lines. They're not acting in the interests of a Democratic or Republic party. But they do hear complaints from all these companies, and X is one of the big complainers. So while, again, they may not have an agenda here, it seems this is very specific to Elon Musk wanting the X app to be the WeChat of America. And for whatever reason, he feels like he can't do that, and he's blaming Apple for that rather than the terrible nature that X has become. And it's not going to work out for him. Good try, buddy, but yeah, we're not going to have a super app out of the X app. Someone might do it, but it's not going to be X. What else we got here?
Yeah, we're just going to dismiss that, aren't we? I was thinking about that. I assumed X hadn't become a super app because he wasn't good enough and he hadn't done it yet.
A super app would be an app where, okay, so let's say X does it one day. They get to be a super app. You open X and there's your news feed, and then there's a shopping page where you can go buy your groceries and your Amazon products, whatever, but not from Amazon, but from X. Then there would be a chat list where you have group chats and a way to communicate with your family members. Your payment processing would be done through the app, and it basically becomes your everything app. It is literally as many things as can be part of your life: news, weather, sports, everything. And on top of that, I think people like Elon Musk want to pay Apple nothing while running that kind of business. So again, that seems to be where this is coming from, is Apple's taking too much commission. Now, to speak on the commission, the complaint was very heavily targeted at the 30% rate, but has since, I believe since 2021, been reduced to 15% for companies that earn less than $1 million, or for any subscription that lasts more than 1 year. And that includes subscriptions like Twitter Blue. So again, what are the actual argument points? What's Apple doing to prevent a super app from happening other than not giving them 100% of the profits?
Yeah, I can't see a technical reason. I mean, I am a developer. It's a long time since I read through all the conditions, but there's nothing in there that says, "Oi, Elon, no." I keep coming back to this 30% thing. I have absolutely no problem at all with Apple taking 30%, because I remember when software was sold in shops, and to just physically get it there, that took so much more than 30% money. But yeah,
I could see a different number, but Apple does deserve some amount of money, and the lower 15% and now 12%, we'll get into that later, 12% for if you have an external payment method or a link out to your website, but 12% is the absolute bare minimum a company could end up owing Apple, and that seems as reasonable as possible without just giving away the platform.
Well, I just down that line because I was wondering about it. But you were saying about the DOJ's 5 points, and the next one I have on the list I got from them was about cloud streaming services and particularly games. This one, I am conscious of the fact that Apple used to block them. I don't know why, but I'm
fairly certain that's gone. Yes,
it has. Yes. So
again, within the last 6 months or so. So the government is a very slow-moving machine, especially something like the Department of Justice. And these bullet points exemplify that. We can't reiterate that enough. The game streaming services, Microsoft has commented, I don't remember the exact moment, but Apple did make it possible to basically just have a game streaming app with multiple games inside of a single app. And Xbox said, you know what? Not worth it for us. Not going to do it.
Okay. Right. Well, that's 2 for 2 so far. Apple versus Department of Justice. I'm interested in the messaging one, as I have the quote from the DOJ about this. DOJ said, and quote from the filing, Apple makes third-party messaging apps on the iPhone worse generally and relative to Apple Messages by prohibiting third-party apps from sending or receiving carrier-based messages. What's the strongest word we're allowed to use on a podcast? that means nonsense.
Well,
'Cause,
it's
I mean, what? What?
it's interesting to say the least. The whole idea here is, again, this is it. Like, it's so confusing because the DOJ is supposed to be politically agnostic, but these feel so agendaed. But this, again, it's been shouted from different party lines. Apple's iMessage locks people into the ecosystem. But again, if anything, in the last few years, Apple's made it easier and easier to separate from the iPhone. There's a Android app specifically built to help you transfer to, or an iPhone and Android app that lets you transfer from iPhone to Android. And part of that is making sure you deactivate your Apple ID so you can't accidentally start stealing messages from your phone number, which was a problem before. There's plenty of other apps available that allow you to chat. You don't have to use iMessage on the iPhone. And Apple has even announced that they're going to bring RCS to the iPhone, which is going to bring even more parity between Google phones and iPhones. So I'm not really sure what they're looking for here. Again, this is just the lawsuit. This isn't the actual... They didn't go to court and tell us to a judge yet, so we'll have to see what arguments they make as to what they're talking about here.
I could understand... if you're going to be nice to the DOJ, and why wouldn't you be, important organisation, you can see their point for iMessages, even if that point is now clearly out of date. But the rest of the wording talks about all messaging apps that work equally well across all smartphones can improve competition. Okay, but I mean, iMessage is only really working, it's only really important in the States. For the rest of the world, including where I am, WhatsApp is gigantically more popular, and it isn't in any way limited by Apple. In fact, WhatsApp wouldn't be so popular if it weren't on the iPhone. So it was wrong when it was right, if you see what I mean. Even back when they were starting the investigation, that bit was wrong, and now the rest of all of it is wrong. I really feel like they should have just given up on the investigation rather than spending more taxpayers' money taking it to court and through doubtlessly the appeals procedure that we're going to get after they've lost.
It's hard to say exactly what's going to happen here. Apple is going to make their arguments. I believe this is a jury trial, so we'll see. I don't know. Okay, I'm not a law expert, so I have no idea. Someone's going to call me and say, no, this, if the DOJ sues you, it's done with this special courts judge, or I don't know. But in any case, someone's going to hear these and have to decide, and Apple's going to pile them with miles of evidence. So there's two more.
Yeah, there are two that I'm actually the weakest on. One of them, I think, just through having not experienced them myself. One of them is to do with limiting digital wallets and specifically preventing the other companies using the NFC, the near field communication technology within an iPhone. I don't really have a problem with Apple having bits in its phones that it uses. I mean, it put them there, it built them. There are other phones. But also, hasn't Apple got now tap to pay on iPhone, which specifically does allow rivals to use their technology?
Right, but the rivals want access to the NFC chip without paying Apple anything, and to be able to take over from Apple Pay. So they want to be able to say the functionality right now is if you walk into a Walgreens and make a purchase and hold your phone up to the register, your phone shows your Apple Wallet card, your top card, and PayPal and other companies want that. They don't want Apple Wallet to launch. They want their proprietary wallets to launch on Apple's smartphone, and they want to give users the choice to make that purchase. There's a ruling in the EU that pertains to this, that Apple is actually going to open up how payment processing works on iPhone and give more access. So I think a couple of these bullet points might be specifically because they see the EU doing it, and Apple's already built the technology to make it work, so they just want to bring that to the US. So I think that's where that one's coming from. It's not a great argument, but it's one that's won at least in the EU, so perhaps they'll get that to win here in the US as well.
It has precedent. Okay.
And finally, we have smartwatches.
Yeah, lost on this one. What's the actual phrase? Let me get. Smartwatches are an expensive accessory, okay, that typically must be paired to a smartphone. Smartwatches that can be paired with different smartphones allow users to retain their investment when switching phones. By suppressing key functions of third-party smartwatches. Oh, yes, Apple has denied users access to high-performing smartwatches with preferred styling, arguable, but also better user interfaces and services. That's not
I don't
factual.
know about any of that.
That is personal opinion from an Android user. Might be right, might be wrong, but it's not factual. So what is that doing in a lawsuit?
Someone in the DOJ wants a circular watch, and they're very upset about it.
Did I ever tell you I actually wore a circular Android watch for a while, a couple of years ago, and I was just astounded, agog at how bad it was, because it would throw up error messages, but the error messages were rectangular, and so left and right were cropped off, and it would require you to press an OK or a cancel button, but the OK and cancel buttons were off the bottom of the screen. I was like, I agree, round looks better, but it was just preposterous. I had to reset the watch every time.
This one comes from, again, a complaint from companies. Google and Samsung failed. They just outright failed to penetrate the smartwatch market because all of their offerings were terrible and their fragmented marketplaces and hardware options were just bad, and nobody wanted to build apps for their bad smartwatches. They were slow and just I'm sure there's a good one out there. I'm sure someone's going to write in and say the Pixel Watch is the best thing they've ever owned, and that's fine. You do you. But it's not Apple's fault that these markets failed. And then Google failed so badly, they bought another failing brand, Fitbit, and then made them fail even worse. And now everyone's very upset. So
actually, I did not know Google had built Fitbit. Wow. Okay.
I'm pretty sure they did. Right.
No, the things you miss when you concentrate only on Apple stuff. Right. Okay. I thought Fitbit was, really good, but
they fell off a cliff. Again, race to the bottom. That's usually what happens when you have Android. It's just
right.
Fitbit was doing fine, but they can't make premium smartwatches because the people buying them don't want to pay a premium dollar, so they have to make them cheaper, and then you end up with a pedometer that you strap to your arm that can't do it, that makes up a heart rate instead of actually checking it. Anyway.
Well, I can see why that would be Apple's fault. Yes. Okay. Reasonable.
It's one of those things where, again, the competition is failing, but the DOJ is saying, well, Apple's forcing it. No, they just made a really good smartwatch that competes very well. Is it Apple's success?
Yeah.
America's problem. That's this lawsuit in a nutshell. Is Apple's success with the iPhone and its ecosystem, its vertical integration, getting in early with privacy-focused features, and broadening its category of sales from a $400 iPhone SE to a $2,000 iPhone Pro Max, Apple being able to run the market and take significant market share in the United States, getting people to use iMessage and Apple Watches and iPads, and is Apple's success because they manipulated the market, or is it because they just make good devices? And I think that's where this court case is going to go. But it's going to be 2030 before we hear a result.
Grief. And even then, there is no law case in America that ever ends, ever. So,
speaking of lawsuits that never ends, Epic is in the news this week.
Okay. I would just like to say before I have a feeling we might be able to bash Epic in a moment, because I don't know what they've done now, but usually it's bashable. I think the two of us are coming off as very definitely pro Apple here. There's a lot I would like to say that I don't like about Apple, particularly the union stuff that they're going through at the moment, which always bothers me whenever they open a new store. I'm thinking, it's not going to be a union store, is it? But yeah, in these particular cases, it does feel like Apple is being punished for being good at something.
If the DOJ had a good case, I would be here for it. Yeah. Lawsuits and regulations can help promote good advantages for customers. This is not a good lawsuit.
Actually, no, it isn't. I mean, I think even I, with my legal expertise, can look at that and think, this is bad. But is there an argument that in the end some good has come of it? Because Apple will have known what the DOJ was looking at in its investigations. It didn't keep it secret what it was looking into. Maybe some of the things Apple has changed over the years were driven by the fact that they knew this was coming. So maybe, despite the nonsense now, the DOJ has actually done some good in the world. Is that possible?
Maybe. I think the complaints do have some merit to driving this, but of course the DOJ's investigations aren't the only thing. There have been multiple lawsuits and things levied by other companies pushing Apple. So Apple's response is, rather than finish the lawsuit, change the feature and say, look, the lawsuit's no longer valid, dismiss it, and it gets dismissed and nothing has to happen. So yes, some portion of the giant government machine has helped push Apple to release features, but not this one, not yet anyway.
Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry.
We do have we have a lot going on here today, so we're going to just do a speed round on other regulatory nonsense going on around the world.
Okay. Previously on Epic, what have they done now?
So, real quick, I just wanted to get your opinion on this. Epic is complaining. They filed an official complaint in California that Apple is not abiding by the one thing Epic won in its Epic versus Apple lawsuit, which was another 100 years ago. Apple basically won on every count except it needed to stop its anti-steering practices, and then it implemented the new practices, which pro-steering. There needs to be a word for the opposite of anti-steering because I don't know what to say. But Apple set up its new systems that basically said you can have one outward link. You can't force people to use it. You can't deprecate Apple's payment system. You can just show it alongside Apple's, but again, you can't promote yours over ours, yada yada. You get them to the marketplace and you still owe us minus 3% of whatever you owe us before, so 27% or 12%. And of course Epic said that's terrible, we want to owe them basically nothing. Apple's taking profits from a place they don't even operate. What's going on here? California, do something. And then a few days later, Meta, Microsoft, the Match Group, which is responsible for dating apps, and X have joined in a what are those things called? Class
action suit? No, that's when it's
no. It's there's a piece of paper you submit to court. In any case, I'll look up the word.
Oh, is it? That wouldn't be an amicus filing, would it? A friend
of
the
amicus
court.
Brief, yes.
Amicus brief. Thank you. Yes.
Those four companies joined up and filed an amicus brief, basically agreeing with Epic. And while all this is going on, Epic had a conference where they announced that in the EU, the Epic's game store is coming to iPhone. Finally, because Epic Sweden is allowed, and they will be offering the ability for developers to build things for their Epic's game store at the same industry low rate of 12% commission on everything sold.
Okay.
And these are hours from each other that these things are happening. I found it very funny. I know it's a different situation. Epic isn't running the iPhone. They don't have their own app store and iPhone, and I think that's the problem. Epic wants their own iPhone and app store, but neither here nor there. Yes, these are two different situations, but I do find it funny that the number is identical and they're complaining about it to America but promoting it in the EU. Yes. What do you think about that?
Can you imagine if somebody sent the wrong email to the wrong country for it? They just flipped it and sent it the other way around, and nobody would notice because the numbers were exactly the same for a while. Yeah, okay. You're just looking at me funny now. I'm trying to remember. There is one of these companies, I think it might be Meta, that under certain circumstances is going to charge, it adds up to 50% of profits from some sales.
The Meta Quest marketplace is egregious on its commissions. Xbox takes 30% plus from its developers. Pretty much everyone except Match Group, because they don't really have a development center. Everyone who is in this basically are wanting commissions. X wants to take commissions from its super app, of course. And it seems very hypocritical to be screaming about Apple's 27 or 12%. And again, it's, as always, the little guy. They're protecting the small developers. Those poor guys, because who else would speak up for them other than trillion-dollar corporations trying to become bigger?
This episode of the Apple Insider Podcast is brought to you by ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them. Now, as an Englishman with American friends and colleagues, a thing that startled me was actually just the detail of how different our two health systems happen to be. I mean, you know, of course, that here in England we have the public NHS, and I know, of course, that in America it's a private system. But I had not one single idea that in the US it could be quite so complicated. I didn't know, for instance, I didn't really imagine that it would be so hard to find a doctor sometimes. Or how even if you do find a doctor, even if you find a doctor who is near to you, even if that doctor has an appointment available soon, you then find out that they don't take your insurance. And you might not find out that they won't take your insurance until you've been to the appointment. So if I were in the US and I needed a doctor, no question, I would turn to ZocDoc because it finds you the doctors you need, it finds them where you need them, and it's always completely clear whether they'll take your insurance or not. And just to add to all this, it's not just simple. ZocDoc is fast. You can get same-day appointments, but even the typical wait time, it's only 24 to 72 hours. Go to ZocDoc.com/AppleInsider and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/AppleInsider. ZocDoc.com/Apple Insider, and thank you to ZocDoc for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. I was quite concerned. I'm very pro the European Union. I wish Britain was still in it, but there was a thing this week where they were arguing that they were criticising Apple for Apple criticising other companies, and said that they shouldn't be able to do this. Companies shouldn't be able to criticise other firms, which I think there's an argument to be made there, but a company can't criticise other companies, and no company is ever going to criticise itself. So suddenly, the entire burden of finding out whether anything is good or not is completely on the shoulders of the consumer. So this is not in any way protecting the consumer. It is in every way protecting the interests of the corporations. So that felt like that's the antithesis of everything the EU was working towards. And that was actually upsetting when I read that one. But
one last tidbit, and there's like 6 notes in here. Go read the show notes because there's a lot of links, but we don't have time for it. We'd have to spend the whole show on regulations, and nobody wants that. But one last thing, Apple says stay tuned for anyone concerned about their core technology fee making them go bankrupt, because they said that the EU, this is their words, tore apart their commission system that paid for technology and processing fees and everything else. That's what came out of the 30% or 15%. And at the time, Apple only made money if the developer made money. But because of the EU, those mean, nasty EU guys over there regulating things, Apple had to tear apart its beautifully crafted system and now has to charge everyone an equal amount. And that's where the core technology fee comes from. But sadly, they have not had time to implement a system taking care of those small developers, those 10-year-olds, high school students, whoever might be making apps, grandparents, they even said, who might be making apps for free, posting them on the app store as an experiment. God forbid they become an overnight sensation and then owe Apple $50,000 for their trouble.
No,
I'm gonna ruin his name even if I try, but it's Riley Testut, I believe. He is the creator of the Alt Store, GBA for iOS, the Delta emulator, lots of fun things. Went to speak to, I guess, Apple's lawyers. Everything's live streamed in the EU, which is great. And we got to see a video of this, of where basically he made the case. I made this, emulator in high school. It became a huge success, but given Apple's core technology fee, me, a high school student, would owe Apple 5 million euros. And he asked Apple's lawyers, "What would you really ask me to pay that? Would you financially ruin my family?" And the lawyers just basically said, no, like, it's just, we don't have the grounds to cover that yet. While it's only a small number of apps that ever get to that point, we still want to address that situation, and stay tuned, because Apple will come up with something to protect those groups. So good on Apple for at least having a statement other than, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I quite admire people who are willing to say, I don't know. But in this case, they went further. We haven't got it right yet, is what they're saying. And they're working on it. So, yes, I hadn't thought of it like that. Good point. Okay. Yeah. What Apple said to me at some point, talking about this months and months ago, was that it was hard to believe. No, actually, they'd looked at the total earnings an app developer would get, which is not just sales of the app. It's advertising through the app. It's related merchandise, related apps and things like this. And they found it hard to believe that anybody could sell millions of these things without making any money at all. But if that student chooses not to sell...
Right. Fully open source, free components. They didn't spend any money, but they didn't make any money either. Why would they owe Apple $5 million? Of course.
True. Good point. If I came up with an app that's successful, I think I might be tempted to charge a tiny bit.
$1, right?
Tiny bit. Yes.
There are definitely situations, imagine if the Tiny Birds guy really charged some money for that. Or not Tiny Birds, Flappy Bird, that's the one. I think that was a free app.
Well, is that different to Angry Birds then, or am I mixing my birds?
Yeah, no, we don't have time to get into it, but go look up the legacy of Flappy Bird.
It's another game.
There's a whole
Truly.
whole thing.
I'm missing out, aren't I? But I've nothing against games. I just never seem to get into them for some reason. And I feel like it's an entire world I'm missing out on.
Long story short, Flappy Bird got so popular that he pulled it from the App Store. And this was like 2013. So go look at the story. It's interesting. But we do have to move on. There's a lot of rumors to talk about that I'd like to get to. But a couple of quick passes first on some stories I've covered this week. I wanted to hear what you had to say about them, William. So first, I did it. I don't know how to say it in less words, an audio compare for Apple Vision Pro. So I compared listening on AudioPods versus AirPods Pro versus AirPods Max. And have you had a chance to look at this?
Yeah, but my question is less about the technology and more about what did you listen to them all on? I mean, Suzanne Vega, Dar Williams, Taylor Swift would be good on all those, wouldn't she? No?
Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd is my go-to. I'm going to listen to some headphones. I want to hear what they sound like. That's my song.
Oh, this is just a corner of a step away from this. But did you listen to any sound using the karaoke feature, whatever that's called, where you can strip out the not the dialogue? That's not the word. The
I
lyrics
have not tried that feature.
Did you try that? It's fascinating. I love Churches, for example, CHVRCHES. Just fantastic. But if you strip out Lauren Mayberry's lyrics, I think musically it's really quite dull, actually, and I never thought that until then. So that's off the point there. That's music examination. I'm going to guess AirPods Max must have been better than anything. Is that a fair conclusion?
It's kind of a two-way tie, and then the third one's kind of a caveat. You'll have to read the verses. It's actually
you liked all of them. That's what you're saying.
Not quite. There's 1,500 words on it. There's uses for everything, but basically, AudioPods great for just slapping on the headset and having audio playing, right? But you don't realize what's missing until you put in the AirPods Pro, and suddenly you're just even further enveloped. You thought you were enveloped before, but it's a next level of now I am truly isolated, surrounded by whatever. Be it spatial audio music or a 3D movie or an immersive experience, whatever it is, comparing the AudioPods to the AirPods is like comparing a CRT television to a full theater system. It is night and day. You don't realize that what you're missing until you put those AirPods in, because the AudioPods are great. They produce awesome sound. Until I tried watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, there's a lot of fight scenes, and there's a scene where forgive me if I lose you, William. There's a scene where the Green Goblin is throwing bombs at Spider-Man, and they're blowing up, boom, 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 everywhere, and punching things, and all these large objects are colliding into each other. And the AudioPods basically just kind of gave up. They kind of shrugged because they're just like, I can't do anything with these low-frequency sounds. So there was something there to replace those sounds. It was the tiniest little tinks. But once I put in the AirPods Pro, it was as if my head was vibrating from these little earbuds, because they were able to reproduce the bass in a way that made it feel like a very immersive bass-heavy sound. Now, moving up to the AirPods Max, same scene. full on, yes, of course. The giant headphones with the giant speakers just transport you, but in a different way. And this is where it gets weird. And I want listeners who have all these things to test this to let me know what you think as well. But I think I've stumbled into something, William. The AirPods Max with the H1 chip connect to the Apple Vision Pro as just the same as other headphones. Maybe some more proprietary connections to automatic switching and whatnot because of that H1 chip. But it's missing the magic from the H2 5 gigahertz radio, H2 to H2 connection that the AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C and Apple Vision Pro handle. I know that was a mouthful, but I promise it makes sense. The AirPods Max just sound like AirPods Max in a interesting way. It's just, you get the bass, you get the clear audio, it's crisp, it's nice. You still get the surround spatial audio, but for some reason, compared to the AirPods Pro, it feels smaller. It feels more contained. Like the sphere of audio around you is closer to the front and more centered and less expansive. And I think there's a reason for that. And it's because there's something called audio ray tracing happening on the Apple Vision Pro that is used for the audio pods to reproduce sound as if it was bouncing off of the materials in your room. It's using room sensing yes, that was part of the original advertisement for Vision Pro. It uses room sensing to determine what materials are in the room and how audio would reflect off of those materials to make it sound like audio is truly coming from your room. And that is audio pods. Apple never said anything about AirPods other than, hey, they give you the 5 gigahertz connection to listen to lossless audio. But I think there's something else going on here because that proprietary connection, I believe, is allowing the room sensing data to go to the AirPods as well, giving it more space and more understanding of your surroundings. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But there is something going on there that makes the AirPods Pro sound bigger, wider than the AirPods Max. Of course, the AirPods Max are moving more air. They're going to be able to get louder volumes without losing fidelity. And, of course, they're going to sound more crisp overall as far as music goes. But that theater experience, those immersive experiences, there's something different there that I just can't put my finger on. But I would definitely say, weight-wise, size-wise, of course, but audio and 3D reproduction, computational audio systems, AirPods Pro are the way to go if you want the best experience on Apple Vision Pro right now.
This might be a very obvious question, but as you said, I'll describe it. I was trying to think about how you would use AirPods Max because they're quite bulky and the headset itself, the Vision Pro, is not slim. So you basically got to clamber into all of this gear. It's maybe the weight of it all affecting.
I record this podcast every week, and that was another thing I brought up on the in the article. Is I record with the AirPods Max and Vision Pro on my head for an hour plus every week, and I'm fine. Right. It's weight, it's heavy. It's not like I'm not wearing nothing. I would attribute it to a motorcycle helmet. There's pressure on all sides. It's there, but it's not like my head's going to explode. I'm very comfortable right now. I can feel the weight, but I'm not, again, I'm not in any pain. I don't feel a headache coming on. I'm using the Solo Knit band. I know that's not popular, but that one's the one that's comfortable for me. If you were using the dual loop band with the band going over your head, I could imagine this being probably downright impossible to use with the AirPods Max. I actually haven't tried it. I just don't like that band. It doesn't fit me very well. So honestly, I didn't try it. But I wouldn't bother with AirPods Max anyway. Just use the AirPods Pro. But I think something I landed on with this story is 2 revelations. 1, AirPods Max with H2 or H3 and a 5 gigahertz connection, Apple Vision Pro, is going to be groundbreaking audio-wise. If AirPods Pro can do this, I can't wait to see what Apple can do with AirPods Max and the much larger drivers and intelligent systems on the chip on that device.
I knew that you wore Vision Pro during this, but I've got envied you that. I'd like to see it in action, but I didn't connect that you would also wear AirPods Max.
Well, I have to hear me talk. I need the feedback.
Yeah, I suppose I was thinking unconsciously the Air. But I keep thinking it's a mistake. Not AirPods. It is Air. What are the speakers called on the Vision Pro? You've just said the name.
AudioPods.
Won't go mad. AudioPods. Thank you. I just unthinkingly assumed you were listening through those.
Well, AudioPods
would they have
are speakers. They would play into my microphone if I was using AudioPods right now.
Right. So too much bleed. Good point. you're very experienced then in spatial audio, and all I have in it is quite an old set of AirPods Pro and my iPhone. I think watching drama, being immersed in it, yes. But I'm in the kitchen cooking away, and I turn to put the kettle on, and the singer is now behind me. I don't find a benefit to that.
Turn off head tracking, have it fixed, and now the audio is always in front of you. I do that too.
So what's the benefit of spatial audio if you're not spacing it?
Okay, so
that's got to be a word.
I've got an article on this somewhere, but the difference between head tracking and fixed spatial audio is you're at a concert and you are facing a band and you don't move. You're staring at the band. Then you turn left. Now the band is on your right and the audio is entering your right ear more than it is your left ear. That is head tracking spatial audio. It's as if the audio's in a fixed point. Turning off head tracking makes the audio fixed, meaning now wherever the audio is in front of you when you turn, so basically it stays centered on you. You can turn wherever you want, but the band is always in front of you no matter where you turn. And the difference is it's not stereo. We're talking about spatial audio. So spatial audio is even higher than surround sound. It allows artists to place speakers in up to, I think it's like 137 points around the listener.
Wow.
So you can have a little drum over here, a speaker over there, a guitar over here, whatever. It's just however they decide to mix it in music or movies. And that is, again, it's a surround experience. If you have head tracking on, you can move around inside that experience and have audio change where it's coming from based on where your head is, or you can have audio always coming from directly in front of you in a 360-degree field where it doesn't change based on where you are. Either one works. I find music is better if it's always from in front of you, and movies can be more interesting or games can be more interesting if it's head tracked. So you can. That's why there's a toggle and control center. I suggest everyone try both if you haven't. If you've tried spatial audio before and you don't like how it comes from a device or something, try the other setting because you might be surprised that you might enjoy spatial audio because it's just more depth to the sound. It's not stereo.
Cool.
But I did say I had two revelations. So one more, and we can move on from this. Yeah. My second revelation was, wait a minute. Audio pods are speakers that fire into my ear to use using room sensing to recreate audio based on the room I'm in. Makes it sound like the audio could be coming from anywhere, but these speakers aren't that good. They're small, tiny little speakers. They're great until you realize there's better speakers, like the AirPods laying around. And if the AirPods are good speakers, but the AirPods Max, hopefully future generations, are even better, bigger speakers, what are the AirPods Max to the audio pods? And we have those. You know what I'm going to say, William? HomePods.
Okay. So I hadn't caught up. Yes. Oh, okay.
So I'm right now. You can't AirPlay from Apple Vision Pro to a HomePod. It doesn't work. But I wonder if there's going to be a case in the future where you can have a stereo pair HomePod setup act as your audio environment for Apple Vision Pro and have the HomePods playing music and your environment sounds, your 3D movie, whatever. And instead of relying on audio pods or even AirPods, have actual room-filling sound from actual speakers outside of your head hitting your ears and connected directly to the Apple Vision Pro. That could be interesting. Maybe not this generation of HomePod, maybe a future HomePod with more processing power. Perhaps that Apple Watch chipset that's in there now is good enough to figure it out. I don't know. But all very fun. I just was wondering, will Apple introduce HomePods? Because they produce spatial audio, and Apple Vision Pro is a spatial computer. Let's combine the two. Let's see what happens.
Actually, this morning, as we record this, I read a patent application, a filing from Apple that was in part to do with any one device knowing where all your other devices are, so that they could send the right amount of sound to them and things. So it sounds like they're thinking of it too. I think the idea was right. I've got a HomePod is way over there. A HomePod Mini's nearer here. My device might send something slightly different to the two, so that it sounds like it's filling the room. It was like one part of one patent, and I didn't really see the application in, and now I think I do. Okay.
There's a lot of
Apple's-
interesting things happening. Perhaps I had a third revelation, but not related to
Okay.
audio. But I did realize that everything that we're dealing with now, the Magic Keyboards, headphones, other than the AirPods Pro 2 with USB-C. Gosh, that name is terrible.
Yes.
Other than those, everything else was pre-Apple Vision Pro. I want to see what Apple looks like when it's building with the Vision Pro in mind. What are the next AirPods Max going to look like? Will they have anything new with the Magic Keyboard? What are the future Macs, iPhones, and iPads going to do in relation to Apple Vision Pro? Or, I mean, it's their new platform. Vision Pro is just the first. So what does Apple look like when they're thinking spatially? And I'm excited for that future. But I have two more things we got to jump through real quick because I'm interested in your response. And then we got a bunch of rumors to fly through before the end of the show.
What? Rumors about Apple? God, what a strange day. Okay.
So, first off, have you ever tried using external lenses for your iPhone to take photos?
Yes, goodness, I'd actually forgotten that I did that. I mounted something on them, years and years ago. I mean, pre-iPhone 7 or something. And I must still have it, but I've obviously not used it in all those years and things. So presumably it didn't do anything for me. Am I missing out or has something changed?
Well, I tested a lens set from ShiftCam. It's the LensUltra Deluxe kit. You can buy the lenses individually, but buying the whole kit's like $1,100. It's ridiculous. But
wow.
Really good glass, takes interesting photos. If you like macro mode on the iPhone, try a actual macro lens attached to the main camera, and you'll love it even more. Instead of that simulated macro, yes, it lets you get really close to a subject, but it lacks the depth of field that you normally get from a macro lens. There's a lot of cool things you can do with physical glass. So I would recommend people go read this review. It's in the show notes. I had a lot to say. Can't get into it in the show today. There's just a lot to talk about. But I did want to know, William, do you prefer shooting with your iPhone? Do you own a DSLR? And how do you choose between the two if you have both?
I have had DSLRs in the past. I now only shoot with iPhone, and I don't care about zoom. I'm one of those zoom with your feet kind of people. So yeah, the only thing I have to do is, can I get to the thing I want to photograph in time? And the answer sometimes, unfortunately, is no. But other than that, it's easy. The phone is with me. It's great. Are you going to tell me I'm missing out on DSLRs as well?
My Sony A7 II is from like 2016. I mean, that's the thing with big format cameras is you don't really have to change them that often. And I landed on a Sony like Zeiss 70 to, I forget, 120 range lens that's just my go-to for everything, and it's perfect. If you go on AppleInsider and see photos, sometimes they're Andrew, sometimes they're mine. I have a pretty distinct style, so you could probably tell that when they're my photos. But I take a lot of images for AppleInsider. But try to guess when one's an iPhone and when one's the Sony, because I do switch between them at random. It just happens. It just really depends on what I'm trying to composite and the styling and what I'm trying to do. But the Apple Vision Pro review has a mixture of iPhone and Sony shots, lots of stuff. And of course, if I'm shooting an iPhone, I have to have a camera to take a picture of it. So can't remove the camera
There's
and
a
take
clue.
a photo.
I use an iPad Pro for photographs of iPhones when I need to. But okay, challenge accepted. I'll read every article with new eyes. But let's just, apart from the physical requirement to have something to photograph that can't photograph itself, you're shooting something else. What is the first thing that makes you think DSLR, not iPhone?
So outside of work?
In any way, you're a photographer. That's what you want to photograph. What's the first thought?
Well, so I think the question is, what am I doing? Because if someone asked me to shoot their wedding, filming it, I would put my phone on a tripod and record in 4K because my Sony's old enough; it only records in 1080p. But if I'm taking photos professionally for someone, I'm gonna go get my Sony because you're gonna look silly being a professional photographer with an iPhone. You can do both, and what I do is I have the Sony around my neck and snap photos and it maybe more poses and stuff. But my iPhone is there for more casual shots because you lift up a big camera. People see that giant lens getting raised, they start making faces, they start posing, they get out of there. The candid shot goes away. It becomes more artificial. But you sneak up an iPhone, people are less likely to react, and you're able to get more candid shots. So it really depends on the situation. Mostly just the iPhone is really good at taking wide shots with no depth of field whatsoever, because the iPhone is just turns that aperture all the way up and just says, all right, you can capture everything in space. It's fine. And they take beautiful landscape shots and actually pretty decent portrait photos. That 1.5x camera has been a godsend. It's my default now. But again, you just can't beat good glass, and that Sony produces some awesome photos even as old as it's getting. So again, it depends on the situation. I don't carry the Sony around with me. The iPhone's always with me. If it's a planned event, then I'll plan on taking the Sony with me. It's just how it goes. The iPhone is the go-to until it's not.
That makes sense. What a strange world that a phone can do all of this. But, yes. Okay. This episode is brought to you by Backblaze, the online backup service. And I want to say that I've been using it myself for 10 years, but I actually cannot remember, because that's how this works. You sign up to Backblaze, and then you can just forget all about it and get on with your work until you need it. There's a reason we have World Backup Day, it's March 31st, and it's because so many people do not back up their crucial documents, and I'm afraid I mean ever. You can think of reasons why people may not. I mean, maybe they have a lot of documents and they figure that storage space can be expensive, but there's no reason that helps. There's no excuse that makes anything even slightly better the day that you lose all of your data, or actually not even all of it. If you even lose one document, it can be crucial to your work. There's a true story here in the UK of a television company which lost its business, its entire business, because it lost one single document and it couldn't rewrite it, couldn't recreate it in time to hit a regulator's deadline. Quite clearly, they were not using Backblaze, but then equally quite clearly, you can. For just $99 per year, you sign up your Mac or your PC to Backblaze and everything is backed up. Everything. I mean, yes, the documents data on your Mac's internal storage, sure, but then also everything that's connected to it. If your setup usually has one Mac and 6 external drives, well then Backblaze will automatically back up one Mac and 6 external drives. And automatic is the word too. Once you've set it up, Backblaze just gets on with it, quietly gets on backing up everything online. And then when you want a document back, you've got it. Over 55 billion lost files have been recovered for users by Backblaze. Now, many of those will have been just individual documents. You know what it's like, lost through human error somehow. But others of those 55 billion, they will be entire systems wiped out in theft, in fires, anything like that. And Backblaze can and has restored the lot. So this World Backup Day, receive a fully featured, no-risk free trial at backblaze.com/AppleInsider. Start protecting yourself now. Backblaze.com/AppleInsider. It's so easy, and you will be so glad the day anything ever goes wrong. Thanks to Backblaze for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. This episode is brought to you by Fast Growing Trees. Did you know that Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the US with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and over 2 million happy customers? Now, I'm not in the US, but actually this 1 week, I really particularly wish I were, because we've just demolished 2 sheds at the bottom of our garden. They needed to go and, well, you don't need to hear that, but with them gone, with any space cleared in a garden, it is remarkable how much space you suddenly have back. It's a space that's big enough that we'd like to grow some things. And actually, Fast Growing Trees, it has lemons, avocado, olive or fig trees that you can grow in your own home. So they might do okay in UK weather, I'm not sure. But it's a space where we would just like to sit out in the garden sometimes over the summer. But here in the UK, houses are quite close together, so gardens always tend to be overlooked by at least some neighbours. So what we would do is we'll look at arranging plants around. Maybe we'll look at trees. Actually, the thing is, frankly, we'll look at everything Fast Growing Trees could offer us if only we were in the States. So I can have the fun of looking to the enormous Fast Growing Trees website. But what you can then do is enjoy how fast and easy it is to order online. And once you do, your plants are shipped directly to your door within 1 to 2 days. Plus, you then get the 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee and free plant consultation forever. This spring, they have the best deals online too, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code AppleInsider at checkout. So that's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code AppleInsider at checkout. fastgrowingtrees.com, code AppleInsider. The offer is valid for a limited time and terms and conditions may apply. Thank you to Fast Growing Trees for supporting the Apple Insider podcast.
One last very quick question because we got to move on. What do you think of 128 gigabytes in an iPhone? Is that a lot of storage to you, William? Or is 256 the new low that Apple needs to be aiming for?
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to check my phone to see what I went for last time, because I know I want right. I went for 256. I went for 256 gigabytes on my iPhone 15 Pro, but I only have 72.89 gigabytes left. So I would have burst that 128 already, and I'm sure I would have deleted things. But actually, if you don't use the phone much, if you don't take many photographs, if you don't shoot many videos and things, maybe 128 is okay. But then, if you don't do that sort of stuff, if you don't use your phone much, I think you probably wasted your money buying an iPhone 15 Pro. You could get an
iPhone
cheaper
SE.
iPhone. Yeah, although I'm not very keen on the SE at the moment. But yeah, so for some people, maybe, but I find it punishingly constraining now. Yeah,
128 is better than 64. And
That's
so
true.
someone like my niece who just upgraded to an iPhone 14 got a 128 gig because that was the bare minimum. It's been 128 for a couple years, so they moved up from an older phone with 64 gigs, and it feels like night and day to them. They have double the storage now. Before they were deleting apps and photos and things to get to where they needed to. And this all cropped up because Apple came out with an ad about how amazing the iPhone 15 is because it has lots of storage. But right below the ad on YouTube, it says, get the iPhone 15 starting at 128 gigabytes. And I had to laugh because that just seems minuscule. It's enough for a lot of people. I had people responding to the articles saying, look at they sent screenshots. Look at this. I have 4 gigabytes of 128 used. It's plenty. It's like, yeah, but you're obviously don't use your phone. You're an outlier. I can agree that for a lot of people, 128 is probably fine, but it should never be just fine. It should be enough. And I think that if you're ever in the consideration of, do I need to delete photos or delete apps, then you don't have a big enough phone. And Apple, every 3 years or so, seems to up the bare minimum, and they haven't yet. Their 128 is actually, I think, a year behind on that schedule. So hopefully this year we get 256 as the base. And the ad kind of brought it up in my head as a discussion point of, is 128 enough? And honestly, I think at this point they need to move on. Everything, their Macs, their iPads, their iPhones should at least start at 256 starting this year. But I just thought it was funny they declared 128 as lots of space, lots of storage.
I mean, I haven't seen the ad. I'm sure I would have thought the same. But what you put in my mind is the very first IBM PC I ever used had a 40 megabyte hard drive in it, and we thought that was so big. It was 40 megabytes.
I always call back to my Sony PlayStation 2 memory card, 8 megabytes of storage.
Right.
And in the article, I even write, there was once a time, and, just infinite timeline, of course it's true. There was once a time you could fit every video game in existence on 128 gigabytes. I mean, I don't think you have to go back that far. Nintendo's, the 64-bit era was still, every game was megabytes in size. I believe Mario 64 is in the 200 megabyte range. So, again, just ludicrous where we are today. I installed a video game the other day that was 110 gigabytes on my PlayStation 5.
Right. Do you think programmers are just rubbish now? They used to have to be really tight and squeeze
things are just nicer.
in.
They're bigger. They're louder. They have more textures, more resolution. It's just, everything's being multiplied on that axis. It's getting bigger and bigger. And soon we'll laugh at a terabyte and say, wow, how quaint.
That's true. Yes.
So
possibly quite soon, yeah.
We've gone quite a bit long on the front half, but we do have some time for rumors today. I have a few things here. Nothing we need to stick on too long, but there's a lot going on in the Apple zone of interest. And what do you think of the iPhone 16 Pro? Have you seen our renders? Quite good. Quite good.
Yes, they're very pretty. I hadn't actually intended to go for the 16 range. I skipped the 14. Love the 15 now. I wasn't 15 Pro. Wasn't really thinking about the 16. I'm just more curious of what it can offer. But then you hear about even thinner bezels, and I don't know why I like that so much. As I've got an old iPhone SE that I use for spare things, and every now and again I pick it up and I think that's a bezel and a half. That is, and it stops me for a moment. So yeah, I'm drawn to it, but I probably shouldn't be. Financially, actually, I'm thinking, am I going to save for the Apple Watch Series 10? Is that going to be big? Or am I going to get the iPhone 16 Pro? Or am I going to be fiscally responsible and get neither of them and wait another couple of years? Are you drawn and tempted?
Well, I'm on the iPhone upgrade program. I'll get it every year.
Of course you are. Yes, I forgot that.
But
yeah,
if photographers out there, the iPhone 16 has a capture button. So if you're not a true photographer, you don't need the capture button. But Apple is saying now they're drawing a line in the sand. If you're an actual photographer who cares about your photography, you need a button dedicated to capturing photos. I'm not really sure about this. The rumor's interesting. It started out capacitive. Now it's mechanical. And there's claims that there's going to be touch sensitivity so you can swipe to zoom. And it all sounds very lab concept-y. I think if there is going to be a button, the most it'll possibly be able to do is sense when your finger is on top of it, so that it can focus and then press to take the picture. That is my guess. Because there was once, I think it was Mark Gurman or someone said that you could do a half press. There's not a lot of space in the sides of these phones. And what would a half press be on a little bitty tic-tac button in the first place? You need space for, if you've ever used a any kind of like large camera, there's a lot of mechanical space for that button to move. So what would a half press feel like? I think it's going to, if there is a sensitive component to it, it's just going to be enough to know, hey, your finger is now on the button. Let's focus and then press to take the photo. And that would be interesting. But again, how necessary is it? I don't know. Yes, you can use the volume buttons, but now there's 3 buttons on that side of the phone. It gets a little weird. You accidentally hit the action button. The capture button is where a button should be when you're taking a photo, and holding the cameras at the top of the phone. So it all seems very natural, but that's the biggest part of these rumors that's caught my eye.
I actually just took 2 photographs of my incredibly bad desk arrangement to see, was it the volume up or the volume down button that takes a photograph? And it turns out either of them work. And I actually did not know that. So, yeah, not really sold.
The ultra-wide camera could become 48 megapixels, allowing for both the main camera and ultra-wide to have the same resolution for crisp spatial video capture for Apple Vision Pro.
Oh. Okay, yes, interested in that. Yeah, I thought a thing interviewed Greg Josiak talking about how he is already taking spatial video things with his iPhone in preparation for later. No, that sounds like he hasn't got a Vision Pro headset yet, but I think he meant before it came out, knowing it was coming, he was shooting this way for it because, well, you will know and I don't how transformative these things are. Is it really that much better, something you shoot yourself in spatial video?
I have a whole article on this, I think we even discussed it, of spatial video capture between Vision Pro and iPhone and the differences. It's nice to have, but don't go all in on it. It's if you're at a place and you're like, I want to capture a video. Should I do spatial? Capture a regular video first, then switch over to spatial, and then that way you have both, because the regular video is going to be nice, 4K, 60, beautiful, all of that, and then the spatial video is going to be this dumpy little 1080p 30 frames thing that is kind of 3D in your Vision Pro that you're going to be like, oh, neat, and then move on.
I'm sorry. So your voice got lower and lower there, like less and less convinced on selling this, like a salesman who thinks it's not working.
It's cool, but it's the most limiting thing about Vision Pro and iPhone today. In 10 years, you're going to look back on that spatial video and be like, why did I do that? That's so silly of me. I should have captured it in 4K. This spatial video is junk. And that's okay. Today, it's the best we could do. and it does look good. I'm not saying it's not. I love my spatial videos in the Vision Pro, but it is the worst it will ever be. So keep that in mind and capture other video as well.
No, would you believe I'm actually just pondering now, do I want a Vision Pro, do I not want a Vision Pro? I go through this circle all the time. I mean, on the plus side, you like it very much, and OmniFocus is now on it. On the other side, you say spatial video is, and it's $3,500. So,
well, spatial video is great, but don't only capture in spatial video because you will regret it. That's all I'm saying. So next up, the iPhone, lots of stuff going on there. Again, we could do a whole episode on the rumors, but there is a rumor roundup, so we don't have to. So go read that. AirPods 4 have been rumored. So before we get to AirPods 4, there is a rumor that's interesting that could affect other models as well. That Apple is working on hearing aid functionality, where you could basically put it in a mode where AirPods could act as a FDA-approved hearing aid thing. So what do you think of that?
There already was some sort of hearing aid thing. Because I remember writing a news story about it, and I tried it out. You could put you put your iPhone down somewhere, and using your AirPods, you could use it to magnify conversation. You could almost spy on people across the room, but that's not quite the same thing at all, is it? You're saying the AirPods themselves could have it. That's great.
So you would basically give it your I know nothing about hearing aids, but you would give it your level that you need, your adjustments that you would need. Like you'd get an audiogram done, and it would know like what things you need amplified, and the software would amplify those things for you, like a hearing aid, and it wouldn't cost you $10,000. So it's an interesting idea, and apparently this is where the rumor comes from. Apparently the FDA is most likely going to approve this system. It would still not be a hearing aid. You would still want your own, but it would allow you to have some AirPods in and listen to music and switch over to a listening mode briefly to have a conversation and not have to pull out your hearing aids. And to address someone who wrote in, I saw you commented on my Vision Pro review and a couple of other reviews about hearing aids not working with Apple Vision Pro. I think that's just an MFI spec that just hasn't made it to Apple Vision Pro yet. I'm sure they're working on it, but again, Apple's always focused on these accessibility things, and if AirPods Pro are getting some kind of hearing aid functionality, I can only see hearing aid functionality itself also being improved by this. It's a win on all sides.
The one thing I remember, I was actually very impressed with the one I just did with the iPhone feeding to the AirPods. It was incredibly clear. I thought my hearing was fine, but it actually was so much better, except it destroyed the battery. I was shocked how fast the battery went down on the iPhone and the AirPods. You're
constantly sending like this audio over a stream, and it's I mean, I guess that's how Bluetooth works, but I mean, I think there's just something more intensive to it, I suppose.
But that's excellent, though.
AirPods 4, there's a weird rumor here. We don't really know anything, which is the funny part. All we know is that there's possibly two models. The base model would be as stripped down as possible, but it is a different design than the AirPods 3, and it would replace the AirPods 2, which, surprise, are still being sold today at like $129. So that's why there's going to be two models of the base AirPod. We got to get the AirPods 2 out. We're not going to keep the AirPods 3 around. Let's kill them both with an AirPods 4 with 2 units. And then there would be a mid-tier AirPods 4, AirPods 4 Plus, I don't know, that would do ANC. But the problem is active noise canceling kind of requires a good seal, and perhaps Apple's going to argue that they can do ANC without ear tips. So again, there's nothing known. Could it have ear tips? Could it continue to be the old bulbous shape without, but still offer ANC? Hard to say, but we've got two devices, two distinct price points. I think that one would be closer to $180, where the AirPods 3 are today. Interesting. We're still a long way away from AirPods Pro 3, which would be probably 2025. And then, of course, lastly, AirPods Max are in the lineup somewhere. Gurman and a couple of others have asserted that Apple could release AirPods Max with just USB-C port. I think that would be a devastation to the product line. They need to get H2s and a 5 gigahertz radio in there. So what do you think about these AirPods rumors? Are you going to buy some?
Well, weirdly, I have AirPods Pro 1, I think it is, the first version of it, and I'm very happy with them. In fact, I was bereft when I lost them for 7 months in this untidy office. But I remember with the first set of AirPods I had, it was very, very obvious that the battery life was decreasing rapidly,
Right.
and I haven't really noticed that with this. I don't think I'm wearing them as much as I used to, but still, it hasn't been a problem charging for it. So I'm not feeling a compulsion to spend £250.
You're in for a treat when you get AirPods Pro 2 because they sound so much better and the ANC is so much better. Transparency mode, the adaptive audio is so nice. But not to push you to buy any, but I did experience the battery loss eventually with my AirPods Pro original. So maybe it just hasn't hit you yet. Again, usage, temperature, anything can affect that. It could take a very long time for you to hit that mark, but in any case,
But I'm going to. Yeah.
if you're an AirPods Pro user, you probably have another year before you need to consider an upgrade anyway, because at this point, why buy AirPods Pro 2 if AirPods Pro 3 are around the corner? All right, so we got two more.
Obviously, USB-C charging case, that makes a big difference to me.
I don't even use it. I use the MagSafe to charge it. But
So do I. At this moment, my set is charging up of a MagSafe. Yes, okay.
a quick update on iPads. They're still not here yet. Surprise, if you're listening to this, there are not new iPads on the market. The original rumor of March 26th, debunked by Mark Gurman himself on Twitter. All he said was nope. So we don't have any other information other than it's not happening on the 26th. Could happen anytime. According to, people peeping the supply chain, it looks like there's movement. iPad Airs have been moving to storage facilities since at least December. iPad Pros with OLED, though, are the tricky one and seem to not be fully ready until mid-April. And there's an update for iOS 17 for whatever's next, 17.5. There's stuff moving around in the software space. I can't fully remember exactly, but that also indicate a later in April release. So if we do see an announcement in March, they wouldn't be ready until mid-April anyway, so perhaps Apple is waiting until sometime in April. But, of course, we're also getting closer and closer to June. So Apple likes doing random press releases now. It's not really, they used to avoid them, but now they're not doing full events for everything. So honestly, just stay tuned. It could happen at any time. So very excited for these new models.
June, of course, being WWDC, which seems remarkably soon, even though we're only in March, but still.
It does feel very soon. Yeah. Invites for WWDC are going out any day now.
Within an hour of Tim Cook coming on and saying good morning and all that stuff, I'm going to find macOS Sonoma looking just a little bit tired and shabby, and I'll want to upgrade to, I don't know, Microsoft to macOS California or whatever they call it next. Yeah,
I have
just got used to not saying Car Sonoma every time, but
macOS Death Valley. So there's one last. Bit here, and we can go through this quickly. I know we're running long, but this is interesting. Apple's AI plans. We have some new tidbits this week that it's kind of I don't know. Let me rephrase. I think this makes a lot of sense if this is what Apple's doing. I won't be disappointed if it's not, but I think this is where we're going with it. So have you been keeping up with Apple's AI plans? What's new this week, William? What do you know?
Well, as I hear it, Apple can't make AI, has totally given up, has had to go begging to Google to loan it its controversial Gemini, and please don't tell anyone. I thought that's roughly it, isn't it? That's the State of the Union.
So
AI? No?
Yes and no. So what's interesting here is, yes, Apple appears to be in talks from multiple sources. So we have Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, a couple saying Apple is actually in the talks. This doesn't confirm anything. Nothing's set in stone, and no contracts have been signed. Apple hasn't announced anything. Google hasn't announced anything. It's all speculation. But it looks like Apple could be asking Google to provide its Gemini LLM, large language model, as an upfront AI tool on iOS. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so right now, if you want to search for something on iOS, you can ask your assistant, which will search Google every time. Regardless of your default browser, it will always search Google, but using an anonymous identifier. Or you could use Spotlight, which searches your preferred search engine, or on your device using Spotlight integration with apps. And that is the state of search on iPhone. Apple has a proprietary on-device private search engine called Spotlight that it develops, and it licenses Google's search for other things and is the default search engine in Safari. What it looks like is Apple is going to do the same thing for artificial intelligence. And I think it's not too shabby of an idea. Now, of course, this could all be undone by Apple announcing its own large language model in June, but this does kind of throw something against that. It makes you think, you know what, maybe Apple doesn't need to do this, because what Apple's doing, we've seen this week evidence of something called the MM1 model that Apple published a white paper on, or a developer paper on, where it's basically fast trained models that are local to a device, smaller, more flexible, and again, running on the phone in a private way. That is Apple all over it. Vertical integration, local to the device, private. So Apple could have a local system upgrading its intelligence across the device, but when it wants to go to the cloud, it goes through Google. Does this sound similar to their search proposition? I think so. And there's a reason why maybe Apple wouldn't want to get into the LLM side of this, because multiple reasons. First of all, they're controversial. You can tell them to make things, and then they make it, and then you say, look how controversial this thing I made with it is. I don't think Apple wants that PR about Nazis. Then then there's the other side of it. So getting past the controversy and the possible PR nightmare that an LLM is, and the questionable actual usefulness of it being a chatbot, which Apple, again, I don't believe is going to actually make a chatbot. So let Google make it. The other side of this is the technology is expensive. They need to buy servers. They need to have data. They need to train it on that data. It's a privacy nightmare. It goes against everything Apple stands for. Do they actually want to do it? Why not just let Google do it? And again, why compete? And just like, why compete in search? Why compete in the space that Google seems to already have locked down? I'm not totally for it. Unless it's literally baked in the system in a way that I can't avoid, I don't really plan on using Google's Gemini. I don't use LLMs today unless they can convince me to. I can always change my mind, but I don't really plan to. But Apple's smaller models on device are what I'm looking for. That's going to be interesting. That'll be groundbreaking, and it'll make the tools we have even better and give developers a new leg up. So I've talked a lot. What do you think, William? Does this all make sense?
It does, except for this. Apple adopts Gemini and Google stuff. Somebody goes through it and makes some foul, horrible AI thing. I don't think Google's going to get the blame. I think Apple
because they did it on an iPhone.
Their device.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and Apple's obviously aware of this. So, I mean, maybe because Google is different, people are very conscious and aware of Google. Maybe that's not the same as if it was something else like OpenAI doing it. That, although we know it all, fewer people comparatively heard of it. Yeah. I still think there's so much risk involved, but
it's all speculation. Yeah. We don't really know anything right now, but I can see that as a path forward. I'm not the biggest fan of it because I'm not happy with Google search being there. I would honestly be happy if Apple had bought Bing and just binged it up or something. But this is a fine path forward. I would not be upset, as long as it allows me and my data and my device to remain private. And again, I think no matter what, because Apple did file that developer documentation, whatever, that's happening. Apple is working on local on-device training models, which is great. Pre-trained models are going to be useful for a lot of things. GPTs are useful for a lot of things, but the LLM side of things, where it's kind of a chat system or an image creator, stuff like that, Adobe's doing, yada, yada, maybe this is just a sign that Apple's saying, you know what, we'll continue to work on this in the background like Apple Maps and release it later. Maybe we'll have something up front that says, you can bring a version of Gemini to your device and let the neural engine power it. There could be something cool there. Or, of course, Apple could just make their own. So we'll see what they're doing. I want to hear what everyone's listening thinks of this. What do you want to see happen? Do you want Apple to pursue their own LLM and compete with Google toe-to-toe? Would you rather see them licensed from other companies? Or what is in your head when you look at this space? And I'm excited. June is going to be a wild ride, I think.
Yes. I always look forward to WWDC, except that WWDC is the software developers conference. We know this. There's never been a secret about it. And yet, on the build-up to it, there's going to be people saying, well, they're going to release I don't know, the M5 Mac Pro or something. There'll be some huge rumours about hardware coming, and then immediately after this will be, well, Apple changed their mind, didn't they? Chose it at the last minute. We go through that cycle every year, and if I can just ignore that, everything else about WWDC is genuinely exciting. The other day, I was so anorecky. I had to drive to London to do a thing, and it was a particular route I haven't taken since I worked in the BBC, and I drove past a place. I remember sitting in that Pizza Hut, listening to the announcements for iOS 3. Can you believe that? And I couldn't tell you what went on in 3, but I remember being there and being agog. Yeah, I still get really excited about all of these types of things, and especially WWDC. Yeah.
Well, everyone, I think that's our show. Please write in and let us know what you thought of this episode, and tell us your thoughts on future rumors. Are you getting the iPhone 16 Pro? What makes you excited about Apple and AI? All of this stuff. If you're excited about the DOJ lawsuit, maybe there's some law nerds out there that would like to chip in and let us know what could be done here, what they're aiming for. All of this stuff, of course, just reach out. I'm available on Mastodon primarily. That's where I live. You can find me on Twitter. I'll respond if I get a notification. And also email. You'll see it at the top of every article that we write, that you can click on the email button, and it gives you a direct link to our email. So reach out. And William, where can people find you?
Well, more and more, I think exactly that last thing you say, the email one, that is my favourite. I can't quite work out what I think about Twitter/X or whatever it is today. So email is good for me. Yes, please.
All right. I'd like to thank our sponsors, ZocDoc, Backblaze, and Fast Growing Trees for sponsoring this episode. And we'll talk next week.